So today we are going to talk about Africa and what's sort of going on in the ancient and medieval time periods in Africa. So one of the biggest things that we see with Africa is the climate and the vegetation and all of the different regions and the climates and how they affect people and their movement, their migration, their trading. Um, Basically, the way that Africa is laid out based on its vegetation has huge effects. So we're going to start with that. So I have pulled up a map for you guys right here that is going to show you what some of these actually are. So we're going to start and we're going to go through each of these, but this is a pretty cool, colorful map that we've got going on here. So up at the top, we have the Sahara, which obviously is a gigantic desert. It's the largest desert in the world. And you can see that it's taking up about a quarter of Africa, maybe even a third. It is gigantic, so we're going to start with that. But we'll refer back to this so that you can see that. So starting with the Sahara, as I mentioned, it's the largest desert in the entire world. A desert is defined basically as having less than 10 inches of precipitation per year. So if you, it doesn't have to be hot, but it has to have that very little precipitation. So it's very, very arid. Half the Sahara Desert gets less than 1 inch of precipitation per year. It is extremely hot in the Sahara Desert. In fact, the average temperature is 86 degrees. The hottest on record was 136 degrees. So that's pretty toasty warm. Let's look at a couple of pictures here. So you can see that people do go to the Sahara. There is actually a tourist attraction. It's a thing. They do have sort of a booming tourist market. That's who these people are here. You can see that you've got guides who actually will lead you through the desert. Here you get to ride on a camel. I don't know if any of you have ever been on a camel before, but it doesn't look as stable to me. I don't know. I think I would be afraid. But this is a great image because it really shows you these dunes and how gigantic they are. And obviously we've got a really beautiful clear day here. Down here, there is actually a little village. So there are people who live in the Sahara, which is a huge misnomer, that people can't live there. However, they are mostly nomadic people who rotate around and they move based on the seasons and the climate change in the desert. So having these little pop-up villages like we see in this bottom picture, that's mostly because those people are nomadic and they do move around. Tourists can also stay in these places, so that's another thing that we see. This bottom right picture definitely shows you the different patterns from the wind that are created here in the dunes. And of course, that's a pretty amazing sunset as well. So as I said, tourism is definitely a thing for the Sahara. Probably the biggest issue we have with this, and in terms of this, is traveling across it. So if you want to create a trade route that goes across here, you are definitely going to have checkpoints along the way or travel along the Nile because, of course, there's water there. This is where Egypt is at. Overall, traveling across the Sahara is not a pleasant experience. And so all the way back in ancient times when this becomes a desert, that is definitely going to be an issue. So next, we have got savannas. Savannas are grassy plains. The savanna is probably my favorite thing in all of Africa. I definitely want to go on a safari to the savanna. It is warm all year round, and they have their highest amount of rainfall in the summertime. Their dry season dries everything out. The streams disappear. The rivers get very, very low, and it becomes more difficult for the wildlife to actually survive. So let's check out some pictures here. This is why I love the savannah, because I've always wanted to go on an African safari and see these animals. So here we've got some gazelles. They're the ones that sort of jump when they run. But this is a pretty cool picture because it shows you how sparse the trees are. So there are trees. It is not like barren the way a desert is. It is definitely a grassland, as you can see behind the gazelles. But these trees do not create a great canopy or cover. In fact, a lot of times you find these trees and they're absolutely just in a random spot, like one tree all by itself, nothing else around it. We have the giraffes down here, obviously eating off the tops of those trees because they can. There's some zebras down here, or if you watch Peppa Pig daily like I do, zebras. And again, you can see out on this plain, there's very few trees that are giving much cover or shade from that sun. Up here, we have got wildebeest. The wildebeest are actually crossing the river. This is part of their migration. As the seasons change, the herds actually will move to different parts of the plains. And so this happens regularly, once a year. And they literally come in these gigantic herds like this, come down the banks of the rivers and cross. There is some danger to this. So the big cats who will eat them, especially their calves, the small ones, they will actually sort of camp out and hide out and wait for this sort of chaos and confusion before they attack. Also, they have got crocodiles that are in these waters, and particularly, again, the calves or the babies, they're super easy targets for those crocodiles to see. Because I love the big cats the most, you get extra pictures of the big cats. So up here we've got a group of lions. This is a pride. That's why they all stick together. This is actually the marsh pride. There's a couple of very famous prides of lions that are on the Masai Mara Nature Preserve. So they have this, it's a protected area. You cannot hunt the animals that are on this area. Of course, the animals don't know where that barrier is, so sometimes they do get lured off by hunters and then they get killed. But the prides stick together, so we've got several females right here, and all of their cubs get raised together. The males will defend the pride unless a younger male comes and takes over, so that's how that one works out. This right here is my absolute ultimate dream. I want to be sitting in a car and have a cheetah jump on top and lay down and take a nap. And it would probably take everything I had to not reach out and try and pet it, because you guys know how I feel about cats. But it's crazy because these animals have become so accustomed to those cars being on the preserve. The cheetahs actually will jump up and sleep in the sun. They love the sun. But they also use it for a height advantage so that they can actually see out over the plains and see if there's something that they can hunt. Down here at the very bottom, we have got a leopard. So leopards do live on the Masai Mara and in the savannas. However, they're very elusive animals. They are solitary, so they do not stick together in a pride like the lions. Sometimes the cheetahs will stick together in pairs as siblings, and they grow up, they'll stick together. Not the case down here with these leopards. It's actually really hard to find them. And so if you ever see documentaries or anything about the Masai Mara or any of the savanna area, finding a leopard is such a big deal for them. Up here, we actually have a picture of the Maasai people. So this is the group of people who live on the Masai Mara. This is their land, and they still have a lot of very traditional things. So you can see here, they're actually doing one of their dances. They wear a lot of beads, which are kind of hard to see in this picture, but they're made out of like the small glass beads. So a couple of years ago, we actually had an exchange student here. Her name was Vivian. She was from Kenya, and she was a Maasai. And she brought us some pictures and told us a whole lot about the foods that they eat that you guys would think are crazy. And some of the dances that they do. It's all part of their culture. She actually gave me one of these gigantic beaded headdresses. You can wear it as a necklace, or you can pull it up over your head, so it's like a whole like headdress and a necklace. And it was absolutely stunning and beautiful. And so whenever, again, I see these pictures, obviously I think of her. So the savanna is easier to cross, easier to live in, but you obviously, in terms of farming and livestock, you have these wild animals to contend with. They do oftentimes come and attack the Maasai people's livestock and kill them, which obviously for them is not good because that's their livelihood, and we obviously see some problems there. But travel across this region is very manageable, and it was manageable even back way back when. So let's go back. Next, we have dry woodlands, which is exactly what it sounds like. So they have 70% tree cover. So it's dry because it says here they've got drought for 3 or more months per year. But unlike the grasslands, they're covered in trees. So I found a good picture to show you of this beautiful elephant. Of course, these elephants are pretty much endangered. People hunt them for their tusks, and they basically kill the elephant just to get those tusks off of them for the ivory. But check out all of this wooded area. So it's definitely different than the savanna that we saw previously. Traveling through this region, again, would have been manageable for the people as long as they were able to bring the supplies with them that they needed. So next is the Mediterranean. Now this is actually a really interesting climate for Africa, because if I go back to the map, this is this sort of mustard color that runs right along the top, and then you actually see a tiny piece of it right down here in South Africa. Oh, there's a little tiny bit there too. This borders up here the Mediterranean Sea. So you are actually going to see that this climate right here is more similar to Greece or Italy than it is to anything else in Africa. So it's kind of interesting because the Sahara just basically cuts across all the way, so it separates here from the rest of Africa. It's a very natural, gigantic barrier, and so that becomes sort of an issue. Just as long as we've got the map up, the savanna is all of this light green, so you can see it actually covers a huge portion of the continent of Africa. The area that I was telling you guys about where Kenya is, where the Masai Mara is located down in southern Africa. So the Mediterranean has hot, dry summers and cool, wet winters, the same as the countries in the Mediterranean. And this does not look like Africa. If you looked at this, you would probably tell me that this was Greece or Italy or something like that. You don't typically think about these regions as being Mediterranean and African. It's not the same. It's not what we think of when we think of Africa. So definitely going on here, tourism is a huge, huge deal. And so these beaches are beautiful, and it does encourage a whole lot of tourism. You can also see out here these big, huge freighters, because traveling along the Mediterranean, trade is going to be important today. They would have used the Mediterranean to sail across into the different areas as well. So trade has always been an important factor for them. It's really pretty there. Our last area is the rainforest. So rainforest, again, something you probably don't think about when you think of Africa, but there is actually a large section right smack here in the middle where the Congo is, that is made up of rainforest. We also see a little bit over here and some over here at Madagascar. So the rainforest, they don't really have a dry season. So it's really interesting that you can look at these different areas from here to here. It never rains, it never stops raining, that kind of issue, all on one continent. It's pretty amazing. The rainforest can be extremely beautiful. Basically, it's designed with a huge canopy of trees, like you can see here. Sometimes this canopy, so this is like the top part that hangs over on the top, is so dense and so thick that when you get down to these other areas, We actually don't have a whole lot of plant life. We've only got things like moss because they don't get enough sunlight because of the canopy. Down here, you can see rivers, very prevalent. They definitely exist, so definitely not in the Sahara, lush the Nile. But down here, there's a whole lot of rivers. I added this wildlife because I just wanted you to see that there are different types of animals who are living in Africa in this rainforest, but they don't really survive once they get outside of this. The rainforests here are endangered, much like we often talk about the rainforest in South America. And so these animals, some of them are actually facing some real dangerous extinction because of the damage to this rainforest. Tourism here is very common as well because obviously it's beautiful. People want to go on tours and be able to see this. So tourism definitely is helpful. The Congo is actually a very dangerous area in some places. They have a whole lot of political turmoil in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is the country. So that does become an issue and also helps to damage some of the rainforest because of those military conflicts that they have going on. So this is also part of the rainforest. This is Lake Victoria. It is gigantic and beautiful, and it leads into Lake Victoria Falls. So these are gigantic falls, as you can see. If you've ever seen Niagara Falls in person, it looks similar to that. As you can see, the water comes rushing this way and falls overboard. You can drive along this road. That's got to be an amazing view right there. I bet people stop right there and get a bunch of pictures, although that bridge does look a little scary. So one of the super, super cool things at the falls is something called the Devil's Pool. And I always show this to kids because it is one of those things that is, you would either totally do this or you would never do this. So in this one location, you can actually get right up to the edge of the falls. These pictures are not photoshopped. These are actual tourists. There is a tour guide. He's actually in this picture, and he's in the same guy as in a couple of other ones that I found as well. So because of the way that the falls fall over the edge, it actually creates this pool right here, and you can literally get right to the edge. It does not push you over. It doesn't pull you over. I still don't think I could do it. I would love to, but I am terrified just looking at this guy right here. Like, are you kidding me, you guys? He's on the edge of this gigantic waterfall. So I don't think I could, but I'm curious. I might ask you guys if you would do this or not. So you have to go with a tour guide. They officially started tours about a decade ago, I believe. And it's only certain times of the year because when the water level is higher, then it causes that whooshing over the side, and you definitely can't have that. As far as I know, nobody has ever fallen off of Devil's Pool with the tour guides there. I don't know if without. Most people, if they experience injuries, it's actually from the rocks that they slip on coming down. So I researched this because if I ever get to go on my African safari, I should probably stop here as well. So we are going to end this with part 1 with the vegetation, and then part 2 of the video is going to deal with the history of the people who were sort of traveling through all of this region.